Piston Fanatic. I'm your host, Dave Dalton, and I'm excited to share my passion and perspective of our Detroit Pistons as we go on this fantastic voyage together. I've been a die-hard Piston fan since the days of Dave Bing and Bob Lanier. I've also been a varsity basketball coach of a very successful program in northern Michigan. Currently, my daughter and I are coaching one of the best AAU teams in the country. Well, we're going to talk trade today, and it's less than a month away now from the trade deadline, which is February 9th, and so all trades have to be consummated by then. So I am amazed every year, and it really happens in all sports. It boggles my mind why these teams all want to wait until right at the deadline before they pull off a trade. And it just seems to me that people would, the teams that are buying, that are wanting to get some good players to help them contend for playoff spots, would want to get the players sooner than later, because then they could, win more games and help with their playoff seeding. So I don't know why teams don't do that. I know everybody's holding out for the best deal, and all the teams that are selling or trading away players are just waiting to get the best deal. And it just seems another thing that, last year should, send both sides a message with the Jeremy Grant deal. So the Pistons at the trade deadline, everybody speculated that Jeremy Grant was the hottest prospect that was available for a trade last year at the trade deadline. Everybody wanted a wing that could shoot the three and play defense, and he was available. The Pistons, were not going to contend for a playoff spot, and so everybody knew he was on the market, but nobody pulled the trigger. And here he was, this wing that everybody needs, 6'9", and can shoot the three, and no trade was made. And then no trade was made until just before the draft, and then in hindsight, in the Pistons, in hindsight, got very little by waiting. They got Milwaukee Bucks first round pick for 2025, and it's not a great haul, although we did turn it into Jalen Duren, which was an awesome haul, so that it ended up great for us. So I think that other teams now got to look at Jeremy Grant, how amazing he's been this year, and I bet they are kicking their butt saying that, man, we should have traded something better than a 2025 first round pick that's probably going to be closer to 30. So anyway, we're going to talk trade today, and we're going to talk about some of the different teams that the Pistons might make trades to. Before we get started, I had the pleasure on Sunday of going to the Piston game against Philadelphia 76ers. It was not a very good game, but my daughter's a coach, and my granddaughter is a freshman playing on her team, and they played at Little Caesars after the game. So it was a really cool experience. I did that with my high school teams when I was coaching, when we went to the Palace. But sitting behind me was a Piston fanatic. His name was Brendan, and this young man was 6 years old, and he knew everything about every Piston player. He knew all the players on the other team. He knew everything about coaching. He knew when Coach Casey should have called a timeout and he didn't. He knew when the refs made bad calls, or when he'd say that should be a flagrant one when Bogey got slapped in the face, and he was right. And he was right when he said they should have called a timeout. And it was incredible that a young man 6 years old could know so much about the NBA. He knew all the lingo, everything there was to do. So shout out to Brendan. I hope you're listening. And someday maybe you'll be the coach of the Pistons or the general manager. It's going to be, I hope I get to know what happens, in your future. But like I said, today we're going to talk trade. The Pistons are in a great situation. I mean, we have so much to offer other teams. Very few times is there somebody that's as good as Bojan Bogdanovic. He is just such an amazing player. Everybody needs shooting. All these teams that are, in contention for playoffs, they should be dying for a player like him. And he also, they also should be looking for a player that can shoot, 40% on threes and 50% on twos, and is just a fighter and a gainer and a battler. And he has an amazing contract. He has this year, next year at only 20 million, and he's like an all-star level player. And then he has the following year that's like 19 million, but only 2 million of it's guaranteed. So it is an incredible deal for anybody looking to trade. I mean, you could try to trade for Bradley Beal, who's always injured, but I mean, his contract is for like 5 more years, and it's like 60 million at the end of it. So I don't, I think he is to get a guy that caliber, and he is playoff tested. And so I do think, there's always this rumors about who wants Bojan, but why hasn't anybody stepped forward and made the deal? So I just, again, it shocks me. A guy that's averaging 21 points, 3 rebounds, 2.7 assists, shooting 49% from the floor, 42% on threes, and 90% on free throws, and he can just score. And any team could, in the playoffs, he can hit tough shots. He doesn't need space. He can just shoot the three so effortlessly, and put him on a good team where other people can, like say if he were on Cleveland, those guards, he's gonna get wide open looks, and he can make it even if he doesn't have a wide open look. And if you need a clutch basket in a playoff game, he's your man. I will say there's been games for the Pistons when he's been incredible, and then at the end of the game, in the last minute or so of the game, when he just kind of isolates on top and really forces things, he turns the ball over, and his percentage isn't very good. I mean, I just think that they just need to run their normal stuff and run him off pin downs and picks and let him try to score off that. So anyway, there's lots of teams interested in him, and as there should be. We also have Burks. So Alec Burks, in my mind, would be the biggest bargain, and I'm not so sure. I mean, if all of this depends on if we can get the right deal or not. So there's been some trade offers that I would never do. So I heard an offer from Miami that they would trade Duncan Robinson, who's making a lot of money for a lot of years still, and he's making 20 million a year, and his contract runs through 2026. And he can't play defense, which is our biggest problem. Is we can't guard anybody. We're second to the last in defense to San Antonio, and we might end up catching them. But somebody speculated that we would trade for Duncan Robinson and 2 second-round picks, and I'm keeping Bojan if that's the trade. I don't never do that trade. So I wouldn't trade him for anybody, but I still think that I've said this on last podcast, we just have to be realistic that he's 33, going to be 34 this year, and then by the end of the 2 years, which is when I speculate and when I really am confident that we're going to be good and contending, he will be either not under contract with us anymore. Well, his contract will run out. We could re-sign him, but also he's going to be, 36 and older, and players just, other than LeBron James, everybody, they say Father Time never loses. And so, but anyway, I was talking about Burks, and Burks, I know that we're not tanking. I know Coach Casey's not tanking. He's leaving lineups in there where he's not playing the young guys down the stretch, and when I would like to see him do that, but he's not playing Alec Burks. And I mean, if I were Alec Burks, I would be, upset that I didn't play more. So Burks is averaging 14 points a game, 3 rebounds. He's averaging the same number of rebounds as Bojan, 2 assists, 2.2. Bojan's averaging 2.7. Excuse me. He's shooting 46 overall and 45 on threes, which is better than Bojan. And he's playing 20 minutes where Bojan's playing over 30 minutes. So he's playing a third less, and he's his production and his percentages are just as good. And so I would think that a team would try to steal him. So again, that's a real difficult one when you got a guy coming off your bench only playing 20 minutes a game, and you're not going to be able to get a first round pick. That's the hard thing, is that if you're a contending team and you think you want to save your draft picks, and you got a squad that can contend for a title, you're never going to get a player. Your chances of getting a even a guy in the top 10 that's any better than Alec Burks. He can make tough shots. I just read off his percentages are out of this world. And I see players that can hit shoot. There's a lot of players in the NBA right now that have pretty good percentages, but they don't hit the tough shots that he does. And everybody, I always laugh when I hear different Piston fans or see things on social media from Piston fans where they're saying, well, we should trade this guy, or we should trade, Josh Jackson, we should trade him and get a late first rounder for him, or, and I know there's no trade value. It's kind of the same predicament we're in with Hamidou. He can do stuff, man, and he's played better lately, and he comes in and he does, they call it chaos, what he creates on the court for the other team, but he's everywhere. He's all over the court. He gets steals, he gets dunks, offensive rebounds, he slashes to the basket. He's great at cutting and gets us some easy shots. He gets steals, but he's not shooting free throws at all. I mean, I would foul if I were him, and his outside shots not that good, and he doesn't turn it over that much, but for the times that he does just pass it, he turns it over quite a bit. So the problem is, what are you going to trade him for? I mean, I guess you could trade him for another player and he's still young. But my thing with Hamidou is if he does get traded, it's likely that he would be packaged with somebody, and I'm still not sure what team out there, when you got a guy that's playing on the team with the worst record in the NBA and he is in and out of the rotation, you wonder how much value he might have for another team. So, but Burks. So my point is on Burks is, we want, according to reports, that Troy Weaver wants a first round pick and a young player with potential or other draft capital is what we want for Bojan. So my thinking is that, Burks is worth close to that. But I don't think anybody will trade for that, and so I just as soon end up hanging on to him and trading Bojan, where we could, and Burks cost half as much money. Burks' contract is for like $9 million, although we only have Burks for next year under contract, and so we'd have Bojan for 2 more years. So that's the downside there. But we could. My thing is, we're in great position because there's certain guys, and I'm going to go over them here real soon, that we could put together a great package for teams that they could get multiple good players of ours, and it's not going to hurt us to lose those guys because they're under contract for a few more years. They're not going to probably be with us, or they will be quite old by the time they're with us. And although that's another thing about keeping Burks. If we were to keep him, he's 2 years younger than Bogey. And again, I've said this every podcast since we first traded for Bojan, that I just love watching him play. I love seeing how clever he is and smart, and the beauty that he plays the game of basketball with is great for us. But I think if we can get some assets, and we're going to talk about those real soon here, like I said, but we could package people. We could package there could be somebody. I still think that Kojo, I don't want him playing for us, but if you needed a third backup point guard, not your second string, but your third string, he can come in and play for some minutes. And I know Roddy McGruder could, he's gave us some good minutes, and he is one of our better defenders. So that's another thing. So Sadiq has been rumored to be on the market, that we would be interested, we would be willing to listen to teams. That was a new report that came out, that we would be willing to listen to teams that might want Saddiq. So my thing again with Saddiq is I don't think he has much value. But if somebody offered us the right player, or the right package, we could throw him in there. And so like I said, he's had ups and downs. I like his attitude. I like his effort. I like how hard he plays. Again, he's legendary for how much time he puts in, but he's just very inconsistent. And he's another thing that bothers me. I'll just get this off my chest. I was listening to a game 2 games ago and Kelser he's never negative. Special K, he's never negative, but he was announcing the game, and Sadiq comes down on a 2-on-1 break. The defense totally commits to him. He has the ball, and Bojan's standing there under the basket by himself, and Saddiq forces it up instead of just dumping it down for an easy two, and he misses a shot. He did get his own rebound, but there was another play even later on in the game where he did not pass. And if you listen to my podcast, you know I point out that he plays a lot of minutes sometimes, 30 some minutes, and he gets one assist, or a lot of games he gets zero. And if you just start paying attention to the games and watch when he gets the ball, he typically doesn't pass unless he has to. He just really wants to shoot it. And, he has been drawing fouls and forcing up some tough shots, but he usually gets bailed out, so that's not so negative. But his percentages aren't good, and he's, less than adequate on defense. He's just not quick. He tries, he cares, but he's just not fast and quick enough. And we're getting torched. People are just driving right around us and getting to the rim for easy shots. Even San Antonio, they did it to us, especially in the first part of the game. It was like a layup drill. They just drove through our half-court defense and got to the rim. And we need to get better defenders. And I think that as players get older, our young players will get better defensively. Sadiq's this is his third year in the league, and so I'm not sure that he will get better. So I'm not going to give him away. I still think he has a role. He could be a great backup for us coming off the bench and score some points. And again, he's always a good player to have around on your team. But if we make one of these trades and the team says, hey, we would like Saddiq, then you throw him in the deal. And if you're getting a player that's a really valuable asset or some high picks, then I would take that chance of trading him away. And he could end up being good someday, but I would add him if that was a part of the deal that the other team wanted. So first deal we're going to talk about real quick is OG Anunoby, and he plays for Toronto. And so it's hard to say if they would trade him. There's lots of speculation out there. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and a lot of different podcasters suggest that he might be traded. So the problem is we got these teams that like Toronto who are really underachieving. So they've kind of been together for a while, and a lot of teams picked them as a dark horse last year and thought they might be a surprise team in the playoffs, but that didn't materialize. And Scotty Barnes, who was Rookie of the Year because they were winning games, and he was part of the winning team, and he got Rookie of the Year, and now he's struggling. He's not doing so well. The team's under 500, and they got some talented players, but there's speculation that they might try to mix it up a little bit and make some trades. So of any player that we could get, the perfect fit, what we need is a wing player like 6'7" to 6'9", 6'10", that can defend the wing and is above average defender and can shoot the three. And OG Anunoby is 6'7". He's averaging 18 points a game, 6 rebounds a game, 2 assists, 47% from the floor, 34% on threes, 84% on free throws. He's only 25 years old. He's already played 5 years, but he's considered to be a great defender, all defense type of defender. And again, I would give them the kitchen sink, man. If they were willing to trade him to us, I would give them Bojan, Burks, Sadiq, and because those guys, again, I don't think are in our long-range plans. If they want Hami or Noel, they need a big. Noel played Sunday, and he played pretty good. And so he was 3 for 3 shooting, but we just haven't played him much. And he was always, the last he played, he's been throughout his career not a very good offensive player, but an excellent defensive player. So I'd be willing to throw in, of course, when I do these trade proposals, I didn't use Trade Machine. There's a way that you can plug things in, but the thing about our team also, we have flexibility, salary cap wise, that we can take on some bad contracts if there for a short term. We don't want to take on a bad contract like Duncan Robinson. We don't want to take his contract on, 20 million a year till or more. It ends not until 2026. So we don't want to take on that long of a contract. But if there was somebody that traded us somebody like OG, I would take on a bad contract plus give them whatever those guys that aren't, in our young core. Before I forget, I just wanted to mention this. I heard an interview with Rudy Gobert that what used to be Burks. He was Bojan's teammate too, and he loves Bojan, but he loved Burks. He said Burks, everybody that played with him knew what a great player he was, and it's interesting. I just admire the way he plays, and I know he's having probably a better than average year, but I don't think that Toronto is going to trade him. And I think that if they did, there's going to be a lot of competition because I think a lot of teams want him. So right now he signed a 4-year contract, but it's for $20 million a year, and his contract ends in 2025. So that's another thing about trading for people, and that was one of the reasons why even I was more for trading Jeremy Grant, even though he was 27, 28. But Portland's going to have to try to sign him, and he's had such a good year that he's a free agent. And so it's going to take some money to re-sign Jeremy Grant, and it's going to take a bunch of money to sign OG Anunoby. But he is what we need. We need a wing that can defend. And we just are lacking that. We have a lot of the other positions sort of covered. So another trade that we could possibly do would be with the Knicks, and they have a lot of little interesting pieces, and we don't necessarily need a guard. I love Quentin Grimes. He's 6'5", he's 22 years old, and he's really talented. But we're kind of loaded at guard. But he could, I don't know, he still would be part of a piece if they wanted Bojan. So they have a bunch of draft picks that are first round draft picks, but most of them are protected, which is including the one that the Pistons traded them. That's the not the Milwaukee Bucks. Yeah, the Milwaukee Bucks 2025 pick. So it could end up probably being like the 28th pick or 27th. Who knows? It's going to be close to the end of the first round. And so they have a lot of picks like that, and so you don't know when they're going to convey exactly, and they're going to be late round picks. But the thing about, if I were to trade Bojan to the Knicks, I would want at least 2 first round picks. The thing is when you accumulate enough picks, you increase your chances. If you just got one pick that was the 25th pick, that's, the chances are that pick's not going to pan out. Now get 2 of those. And if you're good at drafting, like some teams are, like the Memphis Grizzlies, they have been amazing. New Orleans has been drafting really great players lately. And so if you draft the right players, you can get a good player. But the more picks you have, you just increase your odds of getting a good player. So if I were to trade with the Knicks, I would, interesting thing, I was thinking about this, that they could use, we could trade, if we got enough picks, we could trade them Bojan or Burks, but they had Burks. So they gave us Burks and Noel for nothing. We just had room so we could take on their money. They traded us nothing for those 2 guys. They weren't part of the pick that we got, where we got the 13th pick. They were not part of that deal. That was Kemba Walker was part of that deal that we took on his money. So it would be funny. I think they would, I don't know, it would be hard for them to face their fans and say, we traded these guys for nothing, and now we're going to trade them, get them back. But they know, the people that played, I told you the guys that covered the Knicks, they said that Burks was tough. And the thing about Burks is he's also a good defender. He's a better defender than Bojan. Bojan's probably a little bit better offensive player, but so anyway, that's another trade. The Brooklyn Nets could use, they got some good shooters, but, they could always use Bojan or some of the, maybe Burks. But they have, a couple of, they made the trade when they traded, James Harden. They traded the Nets a couple of their first round picks. So we might be able to work out some type of deal where we traded some players to the Nets and got some of those. Earlier, in a prior podcast, I talked about John Collins. I still would do this deal. I can't guarantee that it would be great, but I am confident that it would be. Trading John Collins, if we traded, again, we have that multiple assets. We have all of those players, Bojan, Burks, Hami, Noel, Kojo, Sadiq, a combination of those players we would be able to trade and get John Collins. John Collins has had a really good career there. He's 6'9". He scores the ball. He's having a down year, and they've been rumored to trade him. He's been on the trade market for at least 3 years, and he hasn't fit in there. I don't think he's happy there, and they are struggling right now. And so a lot of teams, I think, are ready and willing just to make a move. They did get rid of their general manager, kind of slid over in the front office, and he's no longer the general manager. So I think they will be looking forward to making moves, and they have several players. They've got a roster with a lot of good players, a lot of good wings, and more than they can even play, and more than they are going to want to pay. And so his contract is for $26 million a year, and it's good through 2026. So he just turned 25 in September. He's talented. He can shoot the three. He can block shots. He's real athletic, and I think he would be a good fit for the position that we need the most. Dallas is rumored to want Bojan and Noel, and they don't have a ton to offer. They do have they can't give their first round pick. One thing that's tricky about first round picks is that the Pistons can't include a first round pick because we traded our first round pick 3 years ago to the Houston Rockets, and now I think that pick's probably been traded to some other teams, but it didn't convey unless it's protected. So it's protected this year. That same pick is protected this year to the 18th pick, and I think it's protected maybe next year to 18, and then the following year it's only protected down to 13 or 14. So, but that freezes us because you cannot trade back-to-back draft picks. There was a guy from Cleveland a long time ago that traded away all of his picks for the future for like 10 years, every pick he traded. And so the NBA made a rule that you cannot trade all your picks. You can only trade your first round pick every other year. So we are not able to trade if we ever wanted to make a trade where we threw in a first round pick. We can't do it. And so some of these other teams are in the same boat. And Atlanta's in the same boat actually because they made the trade for Murray, and so with San Antonio, so they have to trade their picks to them, and so they can't trade any more first round picks. So I wouldn't be opposed to getting John Collins, but I was talking about Dallas, and they don't have a first round pick. If we got their first round pick, it might be 2027 before they can trade theirs. I'm not positive about that. But there was a speculation that they have this Davis Bertans that's 30 years old. He's a great three-point shooter. He was awesome three-point shooter with the Wizards, and then they signed him to this huge contract, and then he went bad, kind of just like Duncan Robinson. When you got a guy that can't do anything except shoot threes, and then his three-point shooting drops a little bit, and they can't play defense, then all of a sudden they really lose their value. So, they have Josh Green that's only 22. He's a 6'5" wing that's, got lots of potential, and he doesn't make very much money. So I don't know what else they would have to. But if we got him and their first round pick, Bertans is 6'10", but he is really just a wing. But his contract is through 2025 it ends. So they do have Jaden Hardy, who's another compelling player that he was considered going into the draft last year to be a top 5 pick when he was coming out of high school. He was projected, and then he played a year in the G League, and he had a terrible year. And so his value dropped. He dropped to the middle of the second round, but this year he went back to the G League and he is was on fire and he started playing really, really well. And they brought him up, and I know he played just recently. They just brought him up for with Dallas, and he shot. He was like 6 for 8 in a game, or I don't know what he was, but he was really good. So he's a young player that they could add to a trade that we could trade because they really do need some more firepower to go along with Luka, and yeah. So I know they want to make trades, but they just don't have a lot of assets that we would want. But maybe they can package something together. So a team that has tons of assets are the Grizzlies, and the Grizzlies have so many good young players, and they have so many draft picks. They have all their draft picks, plus they have draft picks from trades from other teams. And so, if we could come up with a trade with them, they are in position now that they need to, everybody wants to, we need to keep Bojan, and we need to keep Burks because we don't want to be bad forever. But again, I said this in the last podcast, we are not going to be pushing for a top playoff spot for 2 years at best, and probably at least 3 years, and it could be even 4 years before we're really contending. And there's no even guarantees of that. But I'm just going to say this again. I've said it before. I've been a Pistons fan for my whole life since back in the late 60s. And we've had a lot of bad teams. And for the last 15 years, I have not been excited about our future like I am right now. And so, but it's not going to be in 2 years, And so we need to, but it is this time. This is the time that the West is not great. The Grizzlies could easily win the West. And if they could add, an elite shooter like Bojan or Burks, that would really help. And they draft good, and they use their young players right away. They give them playing time. I think they got 11 of their 15 players are guys that they drafted, and they it's like they never miss on a player. It's incredible. So one guy they drafted, Zaire Williams. He's a 6'8". He's only making $6 million in a year, and he's signed through 2025. But he was considered. He went to Stanford, and in college, and he I think he had some personal problems, or there were some problems with his family or with school or whatever, but he did not do well. He was considered coming out of high school. He was considered one of the top players, and then he was kind of considered a bust based on how he played in college. But the Grizzlies, again, they're great at drafting. They could see his ability, which everybody thought was high. So if we could get him and one of their first round picks, which again, it won't be a high pick, and maybe we'll want to get 2 picks, but it's going to be interesting if they just want to hang on to every one of their young players and all their picks, or they can't keep them all. You can't keep on drafting players every year and keep every one of your young players. You just, because right now, like I said, they got a roster full of young players. So, at some point they're going to need to make a trade. So another player, and I guess I don't want to waste your time, but I'm just going to throw you out this player. I mentioned him before, Trey Murphy. He's 6'9". He plays for the Pelicans, and they're loaded. The Pelicans and the Grizzlies, they are in great shape for their future. And not only do the Pelicans have all their picks, they have a bunch of picks from other teams, and so they get the Lakers pick this year. So I just don't know if they still have picks coming from the Anthony Davis trade, but they have this guy Trey Murphy, who's very young. He's 6'9". He's averaging 12.5 points a game, shooting 48% from the floor, 41% on threes. He can play defense, and again, they have lots of different picks. So to make the trade work, we probably have to take on some other player. That if they have a player that makes enough money that they don't want, you have to have matching salaries in most cases, not every case, but he's the kind of player we need. Like again with OG, we need those types of players. We need a wing, and who knows, maybe we will get one in the draft. But these guys are already ready to go. They're already really good, and they're still really young. So he's still super young, and so if we could get him, that would be incredible. I'm not holding my breath, but I would give up all those good guys, all the guys that I mentioned that we have on the trade market, if I could get Trey Murphy. So, uh, I mentioned you to that the Miami Heat that they threw out. They're always mentioning Duncan Robinson, Duncan Robinson, and I know I like Duncan Robinson. I admire him. He was a Division III player, and he went to Michigan, and he was great at Michigan by the end, and he was not drafted, and he goes to Miami, and he lights it up, and he shoots like 50% on threes, and gets an $80 million contract, and then now all of a sudden he's out of the rotation. But again, he can't play defense. We already have too many of those guys, and his contract's for too long. They do have a guy, Nikola Jovic, and he's 6'10". He's only 19. He was the 27th pick in last year's draft. I wouldn't mind trading him. Miami still has their pick, so if we could get him and a first round pick for Bogey, and then they would have to throw in something else to make the salaries match. But I'm not sure if they want to trade Jovic or, I don't know. I just know they're in another. There's those teams that are in a tough position. Like I said, Atlanta, they're underperforming. They had hopes of having a great year and finishing, higher in the conference, like fifth or something. And, now they're barely in the play-in, and Toronto might be even out of the play-in right now. So some teams, I think, feel like they need to make a move. Um, Unfortunately, like I said, the Grizzlies aren't one of those teams really. They don't really have to make a move, but they might. It would help them to get Bojan, in my opinion. Or the I don't think that the Pelicans, they don't have to make any moves. They're in really good shape. But Miami, they need to make a move. They got some good players, but they don't have enough good players. They need some more firepower, and so I think they're going to want to make a trade. Pat Riley's always wanting to get in, and um, he doesn't really ever rebuild. And so the thing that they've done though real successfully is they've gotten players, that nobody else wanted, and they've developed those guys, and they end up just like Duncan Robinson, ended up making them to be very serviceable players. So another team, just like I was talking about, the Phoenix Suns, they've been struggling terribly lately. Devin Booker's been hurt, and so they've gone downhill really bad, and so they're going to be out of the play-in or in the play-in, and they need some help. And the player that always they talk about trading is Cam Johnson, and he's not. He was older when he got drafted. I don't know if he was 24 at least when he got drafted, and he's, I think, 27 now, but he's injured, so he's not playing right now, but he can shoot the three. In his career, he's shot 44% overall and 40% on threes, and he's making $8 million a year, but his contract's done at the end of this year, so he'll be a free agent. So I know they want to re-sign him, but Phoenix has all of their first round picks. So, if we could take somebody off, their hands that has a short contract, and we could see if we could make a deal with them, because we could get one of their first round picks. And now it's looking like that their picks might not be very low, very high. I mean, I think it looks like they're not going to finish very well this year. But if Booker comes back, and if they added someone like Bojan, I think they could end up finishing higher and make a run at it. But player that we've been talking about that was for Jeremy Grant that I wanted really bad was Patrick Williams for the Chicago Bulls, and he was injured last year. So again, here we are, Chicago Bulls. They are struggling. They're doing much better lately. They won, I think, in their last 5 or 6 games. They've won a lot of games, but they're in a tough position. Which again, like I said, we need talent. We need really high end talent, and we're a younger team, and so we need some good young talent. We need to when we're in position to get that high draft pick this year, we need to get games. And I talked about tanking a little bit, and the honest truth is, I love to see us play well. I love to see our young players get better, and at this point, I am happy to see us lose. Do I like to see games like Sunday um, when we played the 76ers? No, that's not fun to watch. Or when we played uh, Sacramento, that wasn't fun. But we've had some games where we lost that were games that we played really well, and we just played poor down the stretch. We had a game stretch where we won quite a few games there, and if we had won the one game where we were ahead by 14 points with 3.5 minutes to go, we would have had even a better record. It's real funny, interesting, the NBA right now. There's some games, the Hornets, who are right down at the bottom with the Pistons, and they played the Bucks and they beat them 138 to 109. And Oklahoma City played the Boston Celtics, and the Bucks and the Celtics have two of the best records in the NBA, and they played without Shea Gildress Alexander, and they scored 150 in regulation on the Celtics, who are thought to be one of the best defensive teams and definitely one of the best teams, and they crushed them 150. I don't know what the Celtics scored, but it was a blowout. And so weird things happen in the NBA, and again, I think the Pistons, we have to get more talent. So we just don't want to get, if you get the 25th pick, or even if you get the 7th pick versus the chance to get Victor or Scoot, those could be, alter the course of our franchise for the next 10 or 15 years. And so we are in a good position to lose. But anyway, getting back to Patrick Williams, he's 21 now. He's 6'7", and he's averaging only 10 points a game. They got lots of scores on that team. 4 rebounds, 46% from the floor, 41% on threes. So he's really come on and really improved that aspect of his game. And when they played the Pistons, he knocked down some threes. So he's making $10 million a year. His contract is up in 2024. I'm not sure that the Bulls want to trade him because he is their best young player. But they're in a hard place, and which is a place I don't want the Pistons to get in. I don't want to be in a position where we're gonna, be a little bit below 500 or a little bit above 500 for the next 10 years, and maybe make the play in and maybe not make the play in, and then always you're drafting at like 16 or 14 or 13. You're just not going to get high-end players, and it takes high-end players to win in this league. So, I'm talking about all these wings like Patrick Williams I would love to get, or OG Anunoby, and hopefully if we can't trade for one of those guys, we might be able to pick up one in the draft, and there are some talented athletic wings, whether they're great defensive players now, they have lots of potential to be good defenders. So the Warriors are, and again, they're in another tricky situation. They got all these great players who have been their core over all these championships they've won, and their bench has been struggling, and so they're looking for a player. And so the piece everybody talks about them trading is Wiseman, because he was the second player picked, and he hasn't lived up to what everybody thought. But he, right now we don't really need a center, and I will say it was really hard. The Pistons, you think we have depth at center, or we have Bagley and Noel. Not Noel. Well, we don't play Noel unless we're desperate. But we have Stu and Jalen Duren and Bagley. Well, now Bagley's hurt, so then we're playing the Sixers, and then Noel's not able to play, and so we're down to our shortest and Stu, who can't really jump. And so we really have a hard time protecting the rim. And so, anyway, but my point was that I'm not sure that we would be interested in Wiseman. I would if I still think there's a strong possibility that we could get a lot for Wiseman, that we could make a good deal for Wiseman. That, again, when I talked about Bojan, he's not going to play any better than he's playing right now. So again, just like the stock market, you want to sell things when they're at their highest value, and you want to buy things when they're at their lowest. And Wiseman's value is low right now for how good he was thought to be, or how good he might not be, how good he might end up being. But I'm not sure that he is. I think he struggles defensively. He's the over 7 foot tall, and he's got some skills and he's got some athleticism. But for whatever reason, he doesn't um, play defense very well, and that's such an important thing. But they have Moses Moody. I'm not sure that they would trade Kuminga. I don't know what assets they have, but again, everybody could use Burks and Bojan, so they could possibly be a trade partner, but I'm not holding my breath on that. The Pacers, who everybody thought going into this year that they were going to be tanking, but they, have been playing really great, and Mathurin has been, I think exceeded expectations. Miles Turner has, everybody thought he was going to be traded along with Buddy Hield, and they're led by Therese Halliburton, and they're playing really well. And so that means that everybody thought they would be sellers and tankers, and they might be buyers. And they have all their first picks, plus I know they have the Celtics first round pick, I think next year that they traded. So they could be in the market for one of those guys. I'm not sure, one of our players. So the Clippers, I don't think they have any of their first round picks. They are in a terrible spot. They have all those. They threw all their chips in on Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, and those guys are always hurt. And now even when they're playing, the Clippers are struggling. But they don't. I'm not sure that they have any assets when I look at their roster that I would really want. So all this talk constantly about the Lakers. What do the Lakers need? They need shooters. They need shooters. They say it over and over again. And the problem with the Lakers is they traded all their first round picks. They traded away to get Anthony Davis, and so they don't have. They can only trade their pick in 25 or 27, and so. But they don't want to trade them because they only have they've traded away so many picks. They only have 2 picks in the next 5 years or so. So, they do need shooters, and so you would think Bojan, and if LeBron is 38 years old now, and if he's gonna compete, they need to do it now. They don't want to wait 5 years or whatever. So, but it doesn't sound like they want to trade those picks. But if we could get both first round picks, and they could take Burks and Bojan, I guess. And I'm not sure if I would do that, but they need to try to do something. If they wait till next year, LeBron will be 39, and Davis is often injured, and so it'll be interesting what the Lakers do. But there's been lots of discussions, and that we were willing to trade for them, but they wanted to protect their pick. I wouldn't mind it if they protected their pick for like only a top 5 pick. And so if it was better than a 5 pick, then we would get their pick. Otherwise, it would go on to another year. So there's lots of possibilities for trades that I've thrown out there. There's even more, I'm sure, that could pop up easily that we don't even know about and come out of nowhere. Minnesota, they could do something. Their team's not doing nearly what they thought they were going to do. Utah, people thought they were going to be tanking this year. They traded away all their good players, but now they've been winning. So, who knows what they're going to want to do. So, anyway, I just want to thank you for listening to this podcast, and it's going to be exciting. It might not be, but I really do think that there's going to be some moves. I really do think the Pistons are going to make a trade, and again, I wouldn't do it for nothing, but I do think we need to be smart enough to not wait and hold out and think that we're going to get this amazing package and then end up not being able to trade or to get, like I said, the Milwaukee Bucks 2025 pick. That's for Bogey, that wouldn't be good enough for me either. So thank you for listening, and if you listen on Spotify, please leave a 5-star review. If you're listening on YouTube, subscribe. It's free, and leave a thumbs up for me. That would be really helpful. Again, I want to thank my wife, Kelly, for all that she's done to help with this podcast. I hope that you have a great day. Do something nice for someone else. Make their day better. The world's a hard place out there, and you can just say something nice to somebody and make and turn their day around for them. So thanks for listening. Go Pistons, and we'll see you next time.